Eddie is here now to give us all the very latest that he has on Fiona. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Tony and Mike. Yes, certainly is going to be a very impactful storm to the region. As I've been saying for the last couple of days, this may be not only one of the strongest storms, if not the strongest storm to ever impact Atlantic Canada with respect to minimum central pressure, but perhaps one of the strongest storms to ever hit the country. And perhaps even one of the lowest pressures measured outside of a tropical system in the U.S. and Canada going back through recorded history, because by the time this makes landfall, it will no longer be tropical. It will be considered an extratropical hurricane-force cyclone, or a hybrid low, as the Canadian Hurricane Center would call it. And we're already beginning to see that happen. It's losing its hurricane shape and getting more of that comma shape, so it's starting to pull in some different air masses, beginning to intensify even further from where it is, at least with respect to pressure. And that's going to bring a tremendous amount of rain and wind to the maritime provinces overnight, specifically Nova Scotia and PEI, and eventually portions of Newfoundland as we go throughout the day tomorrow and really beginning early tomorrow morning. So here is the current forecast for Fiona, waiting for the update from the National Hurricane Center. And this has moved a little bit east throughout the day, closer to Cape Breton Island, but is not going to shift a whole lot more, I don't think, as we go into the overnight. So early tomorrow morning, making landfall in eastern Nova Scotia, with wind speeds still of 160 kilometers per hour. And keep in mind, this is just the track. This storm is going to be probably 1,500 kilometers wide by the time it makes landfall. It's going to be just a massive storm, and the wind field is going to be absolutely huge. And it's also going to slow to a crawl tomorrow into the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Notice 12 hours later, only around the Port-au-Port Peninsula, with wind speeds still potentially sustained at 120 with higher gusts. And this is going to do a couple of things. It's going to bring hurricane-force winds to a large swath of southern and southwestern Newfoundland, which is why hurricane warnings are up. It's going to bring tropical storm-force winds to many areas as well, which is essentially anything below 120 kilometers per hour, which is why tropical storm warnings and tropical storm watches are up for a good part of the region. And we're also going to see a tremendous storm surge for portions of southwestern Newfoundland, specifically around the Port-au-Basque area. Now, Environment and Climate Change Canada has this storm surge warning in effect from Bay St. George all the way around to the Avalon Peninsula southeast. So anywhere inside that yellow area that's a low-lying coastal community may have issues with coastal flooding and water inundation from a high tide tomorrow during the morning high tide, or perhaps again during the evening high tide. But where's the most likely spot for that to happen? Well, I've got it kind of highlighted here. I think coastal flooding is possible essentially anywhere east of Ramia, but not likely in every single location. I think once we're west of Ramia, that's where that coastal flooding risk is much, much higher, specifically around the Port-au-Basque area, where Environment and Climate Change Canada is thinking there could be a record storm surge with tomorrow morning's high tide. And again, that's going to be the southern shorelines with the worst potentially around the Port-au-Basque area. We could be talking about dangerous coastal flooding for those low-lying communities. Tomorrow morning could be a very treacherous / dangerous situation. So if you're in an area that oftentimes gets flooded out by these storm surges, you're going to want to consider moving to higher ground. And not tomorrow morning when it's already happening. I'm talking about like this evening if you're concerned about it, because tomorrow morning, especially around the Port-au-Basque area and southwest coast, we could be seeing driving rain, hurricane-force wind gusts, and a storm surge. Going to be very difficult to move when conditions are that poor outside. And compounding this is the potential and likelihood for some very large waves as well. Here's the wave height forecast for tomorrow midday. Notice over 10 meters right along the southwest coast of Newfoundland, perhaps even 12 or 13 meters breaking near shore. So large waves, storm surge possible, higher than normal high and low tides for all of Newfoundland's southern facing shorelines, but really going to be worst around the south and southwest coast, and those wave heights really drop off come Sunday morning. We're also looking at a high likelihood of at least tropical storm to hurricane force winds in that area come tomorrow morning. So right now we've got a 100% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds, which is really just like a normal day for most of Newfoundland, let's face it. But we're looking at a 60% chance of winds at or more than 93, and basically a 40% chance of winds higher than 120, and those are sustained winds Gusts could potentially be higher than that. When we're talking about the Wreck House area, check this out. Environment and Climate Change Canada thinking that the Wreck House may see winds gusting tomorrow between 160 and 180. So very important to stay off the highway across southwestern Newfoundland. Tomorrow going to be very, very treacherous down that way. And on top of that, we're not too far from record territory. The record wind at the Wreck House that's recorded. A lot of folks are saying it's been higher than this, but what we have on record is 185 kilometers per hour, and the Port aux Basques wind gust record is 161. There is a good chance, probably greater than 40 or 50%, that both of these are broken tomorrow with Fiona, because the storm is going to be so ferocious as it kind of makes its way into the Gulf of St. Lawrence and does so very, very slowly. So again, the max wind gust forecast, most of us on the island seeing winds gusting 80 to 110, mainly late tonight or during the day tomorrow. On the Avalon, going to be early in the morning, but it's around the southwest coast, particularly once we're west again of like Fortune Bay and Ramia and Burgeo, where those winds may gust near hurricane force for like 12 hours tomorrow from 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening and be sustained around 92 or 100 or even higher. So again, I'm expecting power outages, coastal flooding, especially in the southwest, but all the way up and down the west coast tomorrow where we're going to see those high wind speeds. I do expect power outages as well that are going to become far-reaching as the day goes on. Because even though wind speeds, when you're talking about, 80 to 110 or 110 to 130, don't seem as impressive as 130 to 160, we got a lot of leafy trees around Corner Brook in this area here. So those trees are going to come down. We are going to see tree damage. We are going to see power outages tomorrow, and it's something I'll be keeping a close eye on as we go throughout the day. Right now, the rain is moving in. There's nothing severe happening right now, just the rain moving in. We're going to watch the wind come in late tonight, and as we go through tomorrow, the heavy rain is still down to our southwest across the maritime provinces, and as we go throughout the overnight, heavy rain at times across southwestern Newfoundland, and that begins to work to the Gulf of St. Lawrence late tonight and early Saturday morning, but those rain bands begin lashing the area as we go through time tomorrow morning. We'll break down the rain forecast, the wind forecast, and the 5-day forecast in more detail shortly on the evening news hour.